Okay, welcome to Into the Channel, a podcast primarily about women's football. Before we hit the pitch, if you enjoy the show or love women's football as much as your boys do, subscribe or follow us, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you like to watch or listen. Comments, ratings, reviews, all of them always appreciated at ITC_pod on X, at Into the Channel pod on Threads. I am your host, Dino Cespedes, and as always, I am joined by my co-host, Mr. Grant Engel. What is up, man?
I'm feeling great, buddy. Even though we are light on Champions League football this week, we still got to enjoy the quarterfinal draw. And just like this entire tournament, it delivered.
Whew, it delivered. I mean, it's going to be really nice, really refreshing to be able to mix up the matchups, you know? I mean, I'd love seeing the group stage matchups, the reverse fixtures. Those were a ton of fun. But now it's like throw them in a bag, shake up the Scrabble letters, and just see what comes out the other end. I want to try something new this episode. We're still a young team. We're a young side. First ever Champions League. So in a lot of ways, we're still workshopping. Debutantes. Boom. Now we know the 4 matchups, as do, I imagine, many of you out there. So we're not going to break any news announcing the draw results. We all know who we're playing. So I propose a very American style UWCL excitement draft. Basically, we'll rank the matchups based on our excitement level. I will give you the first pick. Then we're going to alternate from there. Mr. Grand Angle, which of these 4 knockout stage matchups has you most intrigued?
Okay. Well, I mean, this obviously beer worthy, I think, at this point. It would be silly not to. I appreciate you being gracious enough to give me the first pick. So let's start with the Juggernauts, the squad that's looked unstoppable, a team that's full of crafty veterans and promising young talent. Yeah, you know it. I'm talking about the bullies from Bergen, SK Brann. Who are they playing again? Okay.
A second.
Yeah.
Check my notes.
It would appear that our new favorite club is matched up against the little engine that could from Catalonia, Barcelona FC.
Heard of them.
Okay, so all kidding aside, this obviously could not be a bigger challenge for Brann. They're looking across the pitch at, I think, the most elite football club in the world. Barcelona has won the last 4 Liga F titles. They've won 2 of the 3 last Champions Leagues. And according to the Guardian's top 100 women's footballers, which we covered a couple episodes back, I've still yet to wrap my mind around this. Barcelona has 7 of the top 11 players on that ranking list.
Come on, man.
And I don't think that's a bad list. When our discussion of it, I think the Guardian list was pretty damn accurate.
You know, we looked at that list, 10 or 20 times in prep for that episode. It never struck me as any kind of odd that Barcelona had 7 of the top 11. So there you go right there. No problem. Makes sense. Checks out.
Absolutely. I was going to say, it totally checks out. So obviously you spearheaded the Into the Channel coverage on Group A. You watched Barcelona very closely throughout the group stage. If you would, please, could you cite some of the stats that you saw from those matches?
Yeah, so we've covered a couple of these throughout the group stage, but I think they were absolutely worthy of getting dusted off and, rehashed here. In 6 matches, Barcelona have 12 different players with a goal. As a reminder, only 11 players can play at one time. They've got 12 with a goal. They've got 9 players with an assist and 15 with either a goal or an assist. Unbelievable. You look at the goal creating action stat. This one's courtesy of FBref. First on the list, Caroline Graham-Hansen, CGH, 9 goal creating actions in 6 matches. Second on the list, Aitana Bonmati. Third on the list, well, there's a tie for third. We've got Ona Batier and Mariona Caldente, two more Barca players. And they are tied in third with 5 goal-creating actions with a few other names you might recognize. Manuela Giuliano, Daniela Vandendonk, Grace Cayorro, Sarah Dabritz, and a 1 Senior Gopset. Excellent list to be on.
Yeah, I'd say they score in bunches. They score early. They score often. I think it's going to be a tough test. Now, I'm going to go right to Brann here because that's who I like to talk about. That's who I want to talk about. So I want to talk about how I want to see him play. And I'm very curious to hear what our viewers think as well. I think Brann is going to have to be brave on the ball here. I don't think they have any other choice but to play like they are capable of holding possession. And I know some teams, you look across the field at a squad that on paper and frankly, from what people see, you would rationally recognize is better than you, you might think I have to sit back and wait and try to play on the counter. It rarely works unless you're an elite counter striking team. So I'm not going to say anything that's mind blowing. I'm not going to say anything that Martin Ho, the manager, has not already considered. But baby, triangles, triangles, triangles. Make yourself available in space. When your teammate has the ball, you have to get into the open space as easily as possible. You have to be calm enough to take a quick touch on the ball on the half turn before making your pass. You have to have the confidence in your touch to make a one-touch pass to those release valves to get yourself out of trouble. Because if you don't, and Barcelona takes the ball from you, especially in your defensive third, you might already be dead. So I realize I don't want to act like I'm some kind of master strategist, and I know we joke about the Brann bias here. I think Brann has the guts to do it, but you gotta be brave out there.
I think that's an excellent call, because thinking about having the ball in your third and having, I don't know, Baruelo or Bonmati or Caldente just nick it off you is just deadly.
Yeah.
That's devastating. And looking back at the Benfica matchup, our guy Camp Hope kind of shouted her out. Ingrid Engen, I took another look at her in that Benfica matchup. To say that she maybe missed an assignment or two would be,
Sure.
Putting it in a friendly way. It was mentioned on our show last week that she's a little bit playing out of position. No, not a true center back. But that Benfica attack had her looking in all different types of directions. And usually she was like half a second late on at least a few scoring plays where Benfica was able to make Barcelona pay. So I think if I'm Martin Ho and Sinyi Gapset, I might be looking at that matchup and saying, let's just kind of attack it, and we'll live and die with that result. I mean, you're playing Barcelona. What other,
sure.
You're kind of limited on options. And I think the Benfica matchup's really interesting, because if we rewind all the way back to match day 1, we sort of commented the first 15 minutes of that Benfica match, hey, they're not afraid of Barcelona. And then it was like the 25-minute mark. It's like, well, maybe they should have been afraid. I think it was like 3-0 at that point. It very, very quickly kind of turned. But the reverse fixture, Benfica able to kind of like keep up, take their opportunities, play aggressively. They obviously gave up 4 as well, but much, much different game than what we saw the first time around. So I don't think Brann's going to be afraid. Sinyi Gapset, she's also been credited with 22 shot creating actions during this group stage. So she's like Brann's most prolific creator. She is tied in the shot creating actions category with a few more names you might recognize. Erin Cuthbert, Grace Cayoro, Ada Hegerberg, Salma Pariuelo, and Claudia Pina. They're all tied with 22 shot creating actions.
Awesome.
So Gapset's going to be a real, we've commented on just how effective she's been, but I think that A, they're going to need it, and B, it might be a matchup that they might be able to exploit.
I think you're totally right. I mean, you're going to look for, I feel like you have good connecting pieces with Keeland, Engelsvik, and Gapset. I tend to try to think about, and the game is much more complex like this, but I know I kind of joked about it. Triangles, triangles, triangles. Like when you can get 3 players moving around and being able to serve as that release valve to each other, maybe get somebody to push up a little bit right at the wrong time and try to get somebody running in behind. Engelsvik is going to be, she's good for that. I mean, we've seen her create chances in this tournament before. So I know you and we love basketball, and Ingrid Engen is not a mouse in the house, to use basketball parlance, but she's might be the closest thing to it. And so if that's the matchup that you have to try to get to, you have to try to get to it.
Yeah, calling back those FIFA rankings. If she's an 81 at center back, that might just be your best bet to go at the 81.
Yeah, I mean, what else are you attacking?
And I think, Barcelona's been known to kind of like have both Onabatier and Lucy Bronze kind of creep up on offense.
Yep.
So that might be able to create some chances.
2 worlds colliding. We know, I think people who've watched the program, they understand my English national team bias. I don't love saying this, and I think she's a great player. I think Lucy Bronze can be had because of that aggression from time to time. I think it works out for her a lot, and I think she, like I said, she's an excellent player, but I think sometimes she can make a mistake, like all football players, but I think that would be another player I would look at. I'm sorry, Lucy. I feel bad even saying it. I don't even like saying it. I like Lucy Bronze. I loved her in the World Cup, but you know what? We're wearing Brann colors now.
Sweet, sweet bulletin board material.
There it is.
Let's scoot ahead. So with the second pick, in the most intriguing quarterfinals draft. I am taking PSG and BK Hacken.
Mm,
Probably the most intriguing matchup on the board for me. When we had our guy Cam Pope on, we talked about the idea of styles making fights, which he totally agreed with. Also called out that that happens in tennis too, which I got a kick out of. I think we
nice.
know what Hacken want to do, right? They want to defend, they want to break, and they want Kafaji distributing up the field so that they can strike quickly. We also know what PSG want to do. Like they want to run. They have two world-class distributors, Sakina Karshawi and Grace Gayoro, who are both elite at putting balls into dangerous spots. That's great news for Katoto Chewing in Baltimore. We've been talking about shot creating actions. 22 for Grace Gayoro, 24 for Sakina Karshawi. So when you have those three up front and those two distributors, that's trouble right there. But my big question is BK Hacken, especially with that back line, a team that's basically built to stop a team like PSG.
Man, in the celebration, as we always do, of every sports cliche, offense versus defense. Let's go. I mean, they might be. This has been obvious too. Speaking as long as I'm like addressing my many biases, I prefer offense to defense. The combination of intelligence, speed, and athleticism from PSG's front line versus the combination of physicality and intelligence of Hacken's backline, it just makes this fucking must-watch football. This is like why
Yep.
we watch. So I think it's a great question, and it could be different in each game. It could be different in each half, really.
Yeah, that's a great point. You look at Hacken, they were tied for best in the group stage, only 5 goals allowed. So their defense is absolutely for real. So offensively, a little tricky. They were one of 3 teams with a negative XG differential, minus 5.1. Their XG allowed stat was interesting. 10.7 was their XG allowed, but they only actually gave up 5 goals. So
Wow.
tremendous variance there. I wonder if that just sort of kind of means teams had chances and Hacken just was able to divert those chances and give up just the 5 and not the 10.7. Offensively, one troubling stat though, they were dead last out of 16 teams. So this is not even just the 8 teams that made the quarters. Dead last in touches in the final third.
I think watching the matches, or as we like to say, we watch the games, bro. I think that tracks. I mean, obviously the data is what it is, but we talked about it with Cam. Like it felt like in the last 3 matches, the combination of Monica Yusaba and Rosa Kafaji looked more dangerous than they had been offensively in the previous 3 matches. But even then, I went back and looked at it, like just talking eye test, in the last 3 group stage matches where they started an attacking midfield of Avnagard, Kafaji, and Yusaba, they went 1-1-1 in those matches.
Hmm.
So even though I felt like it looked a little better, progressively better in the eye test, they have a hell of a time finishing in the final third. And so I don't know, man. It seems like when you have to win football games in knockout football, you got to score. That's pretty trite when you say it, but like you're not going to get a lot of 0-0. Let's try to eke this thing out in extra time, or eke this thing out in penalties. Like it's hard to win that way.
Even with that said, though, their defense is so impressive. I mean, they're still lockdown. They shut
They
out
are.
all 3 teams in the group stage. They shut out Chelsea at home, they shut out Pre FC at home, and then they went to Madrid and shut them out. I'm not saying you could win like that, but you might be able to win like that. Now, on the other side, what I love about PSG is their experience. I mean, you look at the ages of their 5 leading goal scorers in all comps: Kototo, Chawinga, Gayoro, Baltimore, and Emily Vangsgaard. Their ages respectively: 25, 27, 26, 23, and 27. You throw in Elisa de Almeida, she's 26. Sakina Karshawi, 28. So in a tournament of, super young teams, we mentioned Yusuba and Kafaji, they're both 20. In a tournament
Yep.
of like these just next generation footballers that we're just kind of watching grow up in front of our eyes, this PSG side is in their absolute athletic prime. So it's like no knock on the youngsters, but these are like grown ass women out here just game wrecking. And
Yep.
I think at some point, the physicality starts to wear on you as a team when they're just more mature, they're stronger, they're faster. So the key question to me is, will they be able to stay patient enough? This is PSG, to wait for their opportunity for the game to break open, which could take a match, could take a match and a half to materialize, considering how good Hacken's been defensively. Like, can they stay patient? Can they stay organized? Can they avoid getting sliced by some Rosa Kafaji magic?
I think it's a great point. And one thing that I failed to mention in the Brann Barcelona matchup is in this first leg for Barcelona, you got to go to Norway. And for PSG, you got to go to Gothenburg.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be cold, and you're going to have these incredible athletes running at you. And I don't think PSG is going to be necessarily shy about banging into Sweden's back line. I mean, you talk about kind of like the war of attrition there, that physicality versus that speed. And we've talked about kind of how De Almeida's attitude kind of like really De Almeida and Karshawi, how their attitude kind of like reverberates through the squad. If BK Hacken thinks, and by extension the country of Sweden, thinks that like we're just going to bully PSG, I think they might be in for a surprise that PSG is going to say, okay, yeah, we'll fight you too. Like we'll play very physical with you as well.
Physically, I think it's a tough matchup for Hacken.
For sure.
Where they could excel is organizationally and through like their discipline. And then, like I said, some Kafaji magic. You know, Yusuba, she's a terror. Like,
for sure.
She'll run past anybody. And she's pretty good on the ball as well. So that's the recipe for them. And I just want to watch it. I just want to see it kind of play out. The offense versus defense, like you mentioned. And then just get to the bottom of which of those wins championships.
We must know.
We'll know in maybe 5-6 weeks here. Anything else on Hacken PSG?
I think that's all I got. I believe that would make me on the clock for the third pick.
Who are you taking third?
Give me the champions of England to take on the champions of the Netherlands here. Chelsea versus Ajax. This feels, honestly, kind of similarly to PSG and BK Hacken. I think this is a challenge for both clubs. On one hand, you have Chelsea. They're fighting through the significant losses of Sam Kerr and Millie Bright, even though Bright should be returning soon. You have USA star Caterina Macario for Chelsea coming back from an ACL. That comeback seems imminent. Meanwhile, Ajax is fresh off the heels of a gutsy victory over AS Roma in just a must-have moment in match day 6. A must-have of must-haves, if you will. You had to win for your tournament life. And they did it. So they should be flying high off of those emotions, I think.
Yeah, I mean, excellent call. On one hand, you could look at Ajax's productivity in the first 6 matches. You know, they end the group stage with a -1 goal differential, XG differential right around -3.5-ish. So they weren't the most prolific team, but they did have like a penchant for like huge goals, you know, and just huge step up moments. The only match where they really got kind of worked a little bit was that first one against Roma, at Roma, where they lost 3-0. And that one just kind of got away from them. Giacinti I think, got in their head, and they just kind of couldn't claw their way back into that one. All other 5 matches, they were right up in the mix. PSG gave them a hard time as well, but they still fought back in that PSG match much more than they did in the Roma match. So they do have the big play in them. With that said, I think Rome Luchter is kind of the key here. So domestically, in 10 starts, she's 10 goals and 5 assists. Champions League, she's got 2 goals, no assists in 6 matches. She's Ajax's finisher, and against this Chelsea side, she just has to turn chances into goals. You know, so Lily Johanna, she's been great. Chastity Grant's been effective getting the ball upfield. 19 progressive carries for her in 6 matches. As a team, though, I mentioned their lack of goals, just 12 shots on target. 5 goals, not counting the own goal against Roma and the penalty kick for Spitza. So really 5 goals from open play on 12 shots on target in 6 matches on 55 total shots. So I think if they can put a few more of those on target and maybe be a little bit more clinical when they do get something on target, they've got a shot to advance, but it's going to be tough. And I think offensively, they're going to have to just kind of be more opportunistic and more productive when those chances do arise.
Tell me if my ancestral background is influencing me here. And I think I might go the other way. As people know, I'm an England supporter, but I'm a fan of another English football club that wears a different kind of blue. So maybe, and I know Raj Bennett of Men in Blazers always points out what just diabolical haters English people are. So tell me if I'm letting my ancestral nature get in here. I thought Chelsea was kind of up and down in this group stage. I know they went 4-2-0 in the group stage. They had one draw in Spain against Real Madrid on match day 1. But then they had that bit of a stunner at Stamford Bridge where they drew BK Hacken. The plus 10 goal differential looks great, but I think it's worth noting that the Blues battered Perry FC 4-1 in one match and 4-0 in the other fixture. So, plus 7 of that goal differential is just them beating the crap out of Perry FC in what was very obviously a bad matchup for Perry FC, as we've talked about.
Yeah.
So again, I don't want to seem like a big old hater. I think Chelsea's vulnerable, man. I'm not guaranteeing an upset by Ajax here, but if Chelsea doesn't at least get a draw in Amsterdam, I think it might be scary hours for Emma Hayes and the squad here.
That's going to be something. If Ajax can win the first leg, I feel like Ajax has the personnel to kind of lock down and be like, we're going to make it real, real hard on you. And we're going to take our chances, because Luchters, when she's gunning, she's scary. And I 100%. Think like they've got the, and Chastity Grant too, like she's tough to deal with. They definitely could be dangerous, but defensively, they can also like really sink in and make it really hard. So I think you're right on the money there. With regard to Chelsea, I found this really interesting. So they only have had 3 players play in all 6 Champions League matchups. Newskin, Canrud, and Niamh Charles. Those are the only 3 players that played in all 6. So
that's wild.
The lineup's been all over the place. Injuries, like you mentioned. The first Perry FC match, that one was charged by Sam Kerr.
Yep.
You mentioned Macario maybe coming back. They obviously bring in Mayra Ramirez, who's eligible to play in the quarterfinals. She's already gotten some WSL run. So the lineup's still very much in flux. My wonder is, over these next 4 or 5 weeks, is that going to be enough time to kind of figure out what lineup we need to kind of like trot out there against Ajax, knowing the matchup, and also develop the chemistry, because again, very different from domestic league, where, all right, it's a Saturday afternoon against West Ham and all right, whatever, a draw doesn't really kill us.
Right.
But this match at Ajax is like super high leverage just because they don't want to be in that position. Now Emma Hayes, I'm sure she can figure it out. She's got a ton of talent to choose from, but trying to kind of construct a new lineup, because now you really, really need something coming back to Stamford Bridge just because that's the way that the quarterfinals opened up. This one's super intriguing as well. I mean, I think this is the most up in the air of the matchups to me, because I think even PSG Hacken, I'm excited to see it just because of the styles, but this one feels like the most even.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. And man, it is such a good point about the continuity or the lack thereof with the Chelsea side. And let me just raise my hand. Niamh Charles, just what a player. I mean, pencil her in left back. Just a stalwart back there. Great call out that she's played in all 6 Champions League matches. And we mentioned Kat Macario. She's on the mend. She's coming back. She's coming back from an ACL. So you got to give her 35 minutes in the first matches that she comes back. And are you going to give her those 35 minutes in a Champions League quarterfinal? I don't know. Maybe that wouldn't be exactly setting her up for success, depending on how she looks in training. You hopefully try to get her in some WSL games. But, I think you're right. Emma Hayes, obviously, she's a brilliant mind. She's got a lot of pieces to work with. But if you're going up against Ajax, who has a very clear identity, and you followed the group of life so closely, you got to make sure that your team has a level of chemistry going into the match before you see a Sharita Spitza-led team.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the last thing I've got in my notes, let me just make sure I'm reading this right. OMG Cuthbert versus Johannes.
Buddy, tell me that's not some into the channel type shit right there. That is chef's kiss. That's football right there. I mean, that writes itself.
This is a little bit of Mike Tyson's Punch Out. They put you up against Saki Kumagai. It's like, all right, time to go up a level. Now we're gonna throw Aaron Cuthbert at you. See what Lily's gonna be able to do. I mean, that's gonna be a monster matchup. I mean, anytime those two are in contest for anything in the middle of the field, that's just pay-per-view right there.
I think so. And we don't act like we know any of these players personally. And we talk about how it's hard to find out a lot about these players in the women's game right now. Mm-hmm. But in football, a fun thing is to kind of look at the characteristics of players and see how that fits into their cultural background. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say Erin Cuthbert likely doesn't give a shit about an underdog story, and she's not interested in anybody making their bones while she's on the goddamn pitch. So I look forward to seeing that battle. And you've pointed it out about her. There are times where Erin Cuthbert might think, oh, we need the leadership out here. I'm scoring today. And so to see her play in the midfield with Fran Kirby, I look to see a very aggressive Erin Cuthbert, probably early in this match.
Yeah, and I think I'm glad you mentioned Fran Kirby too, because she's been on one lately.
Yep.
I think maybe the chaos within the lineup has kind of helped her.
Mm-hmm.
She's definitely stepped up and kind of steadied the ship offensively, which has been cool to see. So, like I said, this one's going to be back and forth. Very excited to kind of get to it. Let's jump ahead to our last matchup, quarterfinals. I'm up, only one pick left. And that's Benfica taking on the champions of Group B, Lyon. Our squad from Benfica, they end up with the toughest draw of the bunch, drawing Lyon, arguably the worst outcome on the board for them, considering they couldn't draw Barcelona. This Benfica side, though, we've mentioned it prior, they've grown up big time during the tournament.
Yep.
They get started with the 5-0 loss to Barca. This kind of went a little bit under the radar for me. So they lose 5-0. Then they win back-to-back must-have matches over Rosengard and Eintracht Frankfurt. Then they string together 2 straight away draws, not easy to do, before earning another draw against just the greatest women's football team ever assembled. One interesting thing to note on Benfica, not counting goalkeeper Lena Powell's, they've been another team with a lot of flux within their lineup. They've only had 3 players start all 6, Maria Alidu, Andrea Faria, and Anna Gaspar. And then again, outside of Powell's, they've only had 5 players total play in all 6. The 3 I mentioned, plus Catarina Amado and Nicole Reisler, who's been awesome. So
yeah.
I kind of wonder if we have yet to see this Benfica side at full strength. And then even despite that, they were still able to string together 5 straight Champions League results, 5-match unbeaten streak, nothing to sneeze at. But what's better than a 5-match unbeaten streak? How about a 6-match unbeaten streak, which is what Lyon brings to these quarterfinals. Super intrigued to see, like you mentioned, the fact that this leg starts with the runner-up playing at home. So I just feel like if you're Benfica, you just drew with Barcelona at home, which could have easily been a win, by the way. I mean, are you going to be that terrified when Lyon comes to town? Or are you going to feel like, they might be in for something?
I don't think they'll be scared. I think they have shown that is their DNA. But I think Lyon is going to look at this matchup and say, look at our DNA. We don't think we can win the tournament. We know we can win the tournament.
Mm-hmm.
This is our trophy, is really how Lyon looks at this. They have won the UEFA Women's Champions League 8 times since 2011.
Come on, man.
It's just ridiculous. I mean, I think they come out in this match and they look to score early, which I think we talk about them all the time. Even with Barcelona, they've had matches where, like we talked about one of the matches, Barcelona's match day 1 against Benfica, where they didn't score in the first 15. Lyon is almost guaranteed a goal in the first 12, it feels like. It's just outrageous how quickly they're able to score in every single match. You have Selma Basha, who is just an absolute nightmare down the left-hand side. And then we've talked about it. Where do you want them to score? How do you want them to score? Eugenie Le-Sommer, Ada Hegerberg, and Caridatu Diani. Where are they going to score from? Wherever you want. Drop the ball somewhere within 30 yards. And not only are they skilled enough, they are audacious enough to take any shot from any angle at any time on their first touch, if you want, and they can score. So I think Lyon is going to come out here. I don't think they're going to be psyched about that draw that they had in the final fixture of match day 6. And it might be that meme of, I think it's Bugs Bunny. He hammers a nail into the back of a bear, and then he runs away, and the bear turns around, and Elmer Fudd is standing there. I don't think Benfica is necessarily Elmer Fudd, but not a great look when you have to deal with a very pissed off Lyon side.
Another fun stat that I saw, Benfica, they haven't lost a group stage match since Christy Ushaby has played, since her return. So that's 5 in a row that they haven't lost. And then when she returned, they've gone to almost exclusively a back 3, which I also found interesting. I mean, first of all, she's a menace too. She's super, super hard to deal with. Yeah. She covers a lot of ground. And the fact that she's back and that gave them the green light to kind of go to the back three, feel comfortable doing it. They did give up goals, but I mean, the strategy worked out swimmingly. Yeah. On the Lyon side, I mean, you called it out. Not quite as prolific as Barcelona, but still 9 different players with a goal, 3 different players with 3 goals, Majri, Debritz, and Gilles, 2 different players with 5 goals, Diani and Ada Hegerberg, and 11 players who've notched an assist. I'm glad you called out Sama Basha. I think Lyon are absolutely at their best when they're playing Basha ball. When you look at the shot creating actions, she's been credited with 46 shot creating actions in 6 matches. That's 8 ahead of the next best in this category, Barcelona's Carolina Graham-Hansen, who's notched 38. So Basha's creating, I don't want to say everything, but she's creating all the time. Yeah. And I think that's going to be pretty tricky for Benfica to deal with. We'll kind of see what adjustments they make defensively, but should be a really fun matchup.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, great call out with Basha's ability to create shots for her teammates. It's one of the stats that I think matches up so perfectly and really says a lot. Lyon's goal differential is plus 20. Their expected goal differential is plus 21.7. When they have a look, they're scoring. Like, it's just an unbelievable conversion rate. And so shout to Benfica. Like, we talk about them being like them and Portugal as kind of like a women's footballing country, like being on this awesome trajectory, and they're doing a great job. And from what I understand, hopefully I'm not getting this wrong, but I think we talked about during the World Cup, Portugal is investing in the women's game over there. So that is all great. Man, feels like you might be running into a buzzsaw on this one.
Yeah, very tough draw for them. I think the one thing they can hold on to, though, they really have not rolled out their whole squad yet. I mean, the last 2 matches without Kika Nazareth, Lucia Alves missed games. Ushabi missed the first one against Barcelona. I mean, you really, when you look at it, they might have a little time to gel. And I think at the very least, it's still just 2 matches, right?
That's true.
At the very least, they might be able to come out and kind of shock Lyon. It's going to come down to what are they going to do about Basha, and how's the backline going to deal with that Lyon attack?
Yeah.
And are they going to be able to possess enough of the ball to not just hand Lyon chances? Because, like, to your point, in the first 7-8 minutes of every match, it feels like it's always 1-0 Lyon. They got to do whatever they can to avoid that. And against Barcelona, they gave up too early, right? So they're down, I think, at the 25-minute mark, somewhere in that neighborhood. They're already down 2-0. They definitely have to avoid that against this Lyon side, especially opening the tie at home.
That's a good point. It also kind of like made me realize they were down 2-0 to Barcelona and clawed back. So I guess, they could always hang their hat on that. Like, even if Lyon, now I wouldn't recommend giving up goals early to Lyon, but that's really interesting that you bring that up. Like, obviously, like we talked about that match last week, I guess they have that in their back pocket to be like, look, if we go down early, we know we can scratch this thing out. But man, Lyon, they get a taste of blood, and they are relentless.
Yeah, I mean, Diani's so clinical that if she's got the chances, she's going to score.
Yep.
If she touches the ball 3-4 times inside the 18, that's at least a goal or 2. So I feel like Benfica got like, the toughest draw. Maybe you can make a case that Barcelona also had maybe the toughest or second toughest draw. We'll talk about that one later. All right, I'm going to invite you on a little journey into the news. There have been a few interesting news items since we last convened. Anything in particular you want to get into?
I think anybody who follows WOSO Twitter, women's soccer Twitter as it is affectionately called, knows that since February 1st, I think there's been one like really big story that's kind of dominated the discourse. We care about journalism here. And so I think a significant part of sports media today is essentially who said the thing that we can jump on. Well, on February 1st, The Athletic's ace women's football reporter, Meg Linehan, who is unimpeachably America's best women's football journalist, published an interview with U.S. women's national team and Lyon number 10, Lindsey Horan. And oh, buddy, Lindsey Horan said the thing. But I feel like those comments, they've largely been dissected, they've been analyzed, they've been re-dissected, they've been reanalyzed multiple times. So we're not going to bore you with like all of our thoughts on that. So let's talk a little bit about Horan subtly and not so subtly pointing out this very stark difference in footballing culture in our country, the USA, compared to other countries. And in her example, France, where she obviously plays for Lyon. Dino, the pre-match photo ops and television pundits aside, what are you looking at when someone starts comparing USA footballing culture to those in other countries?
I mean, there's definitely a stark difference,
Yeah.
right? European footballing culture, maybe global footballing culture more generally, at least in the women's game, it's an offshoot of the men's culture, especially in a country like France. It's the combination of the multi-generational fandom and the football monoculture from a sports standpoint. Like football is kind of everything. And I think there's always going to be intricacies about the game that maybe get lost a little bit on an American audience. But on the flip side, and this is where I think Lindsey Horan's a little bit off base. It's not linear, right? It's not like they know more and we know less, and that is what it is, right? We just have a different culture. Our football culture, our soccer culture, we'll call it, has a lot to do with like being tougher, being faster, being stronger, being more physical, run fast, kick the ball over the top, and somebody will run onto it and smash it, and it's like, when we don't win, it's like, well, why aren't we out there smashing it? It's like, no, it's like, because the game's evolved a little bit. And I think we had the luxury of essentially defining what women's football was for maybe 2 decades, and I think we had a huge head start with how we developed youth women footballers here, through the high school system, through the college system. But the reality is that style is probably over, right? For us to be able to compete, we're not just going to be able to kick the ball up the field and run onto it and smash home a couple goals and out tough them. And I think what was really haunting for me was like playing back the Vlatko Andonovski quote from Under Pressure, where he's like, go out there, be you, be us. We're the best. We're the gold standard. The problem with that is like, they did try to go out and be themselves, but themselves wasn't quite good enough on this stage. The other quote that kind of haunts me, Andres Jonker, Netherlands coach, I'll read it again. And I quote, in the past, the American women were a lot fitter than the rest of the world. But I really think those days are over. If you look at the Champions League nowadays, which we do pretty much every day here at the ITC, that was my interjection, not part of the quote. You see the same level of intensity. So the big question is now, what is left of their superiority? Let's see about that. And he was dead fucking on, like, not only did we not have that crazy physical athletic advantage, but our style was DOA.
Yep.
Couldn't really break through. I mean, not a lot of goals. We got shots off, but I mean, the quality on them just wasn't kind of at the level. And at the end of the day, there might have been 3 or 4 teams that would have put an end to our tournament, if we didn't kind of get bounced by Sweden.
I think you're dead on, man. I mean, you hear managers talk about it all the time, and I know it sounds like, and I'd be interested what like our international viewers think about this, but I love when I hear a manager talk about a player and they say they're enjoying their football right now. Because like for individual players, like you talk about like the old, like the physical dominance. I mean, I do not think that you can underestimate the impact of Title IX in sports in the United States of America, like equal funding to women's athletics compared to men's athletics. Like that doesn't exist. That is a United States policy. There was that lack of investment in countries like Brazil, who obviously, very obviously, have a significantly superior footballing culture to the United States. When I think about a manager saying, like, this person's enjoying their football, like, that means my number 8 is enjoying playing as a number 8. My number 10 knows that they play like a number 10. My wingers know what to do, and they know where to pick their spots. My number 9 takes being a number 9 and scoring goals more seriously than anything else in their professional life. And I've made this point about the World Cup. We talk about it a lot. And you hit the nail perfectly on the head, is that, women's football in the United States was birthed out of, it's this fun, good exercise of a sport. And the only really way for young people to adopt it was through this kind of youth soccer mentality that is birthed out of other youth sports in the United States. In Europe, in South America, it's an overlay of This is the most important sport we have. This is the highest grossing sport. This sport has the most eyeballs. And all I'm doing is taking the infrastructure that we have in the men's game and I am just putting it over the women's game. And now I'm adding the water to this plant, and that's money. And I'm now investing in this. And now you have very serious people coaching the games, and you just cannot find that in the USA. And we talked about it with Cam. If you're going to be the USA and you're going to not get lapped, you have to go out and hire Emma Hayes. You have to go out and hire Laura Harvey. If you're OL Reign, you have to poach talent from those football rich cultures to be able to keep up. And I don't think that Lindsey Horan said it artfully, but I think when she said in that article, like, it has to be about the football, I very much hope that Lindsey Horan was not taking a kind of Carly Lloydish approach to that. I didn't read into it that way, honestly. Just to keep it a buck here, like, I don't even think it's my place to assign the way Lindsey Horan said it. If other people took it a different way, I totally understand. I respect that. But when Lindsey Horan says this guy has to be about the football, I think that she is talking about, we have to talk about how we can strategically win football matches. And I think she's right about that.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's where it could be a little frustrating, right? Because even kind of like as a federation, as an organization, as an entity, you need some kind of both institutional knowledge and a vision,
Yeah.
right? And I think part of bringing on Emma Hayes, that's a step in a wonderful direction. But, you know, she's the manager, right? And I think there's still a program that exists around her, and probably some, you know, retained knowledge, you know, or retained beliefs that just might not work, you know. And if you're a Lindsey Horan, arguably the best player on the U.S. Women's National Team,
Yep.
probably my favorite player on the U.S. Women's National Team,
Yep.
it might be frustrating just, you know, playing on a team like Lyon in a country that just kind of has a completely different view, not better or worse, just different. And then coming back here and being like, these guys just don't get it. And whether she's right or wrong, she's just on a different page. And I think that's kind of what you see seeping out. But I do also think we do need to get a little smarter.
Yep.
Maybe change our expectations and have a little bit better vision around what we should do. You know, I think we've kind of gushed over maybe some of the young players, and like, I think it's because we see different styles. You know, I think we see like a lot of intelligence from a younger age, you know. And I think you go from a place where the NWSL draft, you know, you're in your early 20s, and now we're seeing players in their teen years really showing an incredible level of understanding about how the game works and where the angles are, and not very U.S. Women's National TV, right? You know, like, you know, historically, I think we have that brand of football that, again, we tried to trot out again this past World Cup. Didn't quite work out, but I think the seeds are there for something interesting to happen in the future. But again, the question is, how long is that going to take? Because I think one thing that's very clear is we've got to make some adjustments. We've got to switch up the playbook a little bit. Whether that's something that can happen in one World Cup cycle, we've got the Olympics coming up this summer, or if it's something that takes a little longer. I think that's really what it comes down to. And if you're Lindsey Horan, she's in her late 20s. I mean, she might have one more. Maybe she's got two. Like, we'll see. You know,
Yep.
I mean, I think there's a little bit of that too.
I think that is an excellent point. And I think a benefit that I would assume that Lindsey Horan sees, like, with these younger players, like, I mean, Mia Fishel plays for Chelsea, and now she kind of has that background. But even for our young players who don't play overseas, for maybe who we would deem absolute elite managers, you can get your 10,000 hours. You can, like, download Manchester City strategy guides, or like, how does Mikel Arteta, like, organize his defense? Like, you can find that shit on the internet now. So I think that is a huge advantage that younger players, even in the men's game in the 90s, like, you know, we never had anything like that. We always joke about it. I was scrounging to watch like 3-day-old Manchester United matches on Fox Soccer World on my digital cable, and like trying to, like, Googling some really, like, kind of shady websites, or not even Google searching. I was Yahoo searching, like, where can I watch soccer matches, or like, where, like, trying to find articles and stuff like that. So I think the players They have more resources. It's easier to find that great strategy themselves and kind of build themselves into it. But let me, as we are into the news right now, the 2024 CONCACAF Women's Gold Cup roster for the U.S. Women's National Team was announced today.
Oh, let's go.
I'm going to read you the list of forwards for the U.S. Women's National Team. The aforementioned Mia Fischel,
Let's go.
Midge Purse, Trinity Rodman, Jaden Shaw, Sophia Smith, Lynn Williams. That's what I'm talking about, buddy. That's what I'm talking about. Like, that's what we're talking about. Like, we need young, great players to get like real reps in meaningful tournaments. And I just feel like when you hire Emma Hayes, I think you're spot on about it's not just Emma Hayes. It has to be the footballing culture over that. And how much trust do I have in U.S. soccer? It remains to be seen. But when you hire Emma Hayes, I would imagine that Emma Hayes walks in kind of, I'm trying to think of like a good comp for it. Because, I mean, in American football, Bill Belichick is not a good comp. But I would say that Bill Belichick probably walked into a lot of interviews and said, if you hire me, I'm running the whole show. And a bunch of teams are like, no thanks. But if you're Emma Hayes and U.S. Soccer comes knocking on your door, you're Emma Hayes and you go, I have to run the whole show here. And they probably said, yeah, you probably should.
Sign us up. Let's go.
Sure.
One minor quibble with kind of what you said.
Yeah.
The strategy is important. You know, the tactics, the lineups, what are we going to do? Bing, bang, boom, the X's and O's. The strategy is one piece, right? The other piece is like the actual development of the players.
Right, yeah.
You know, we don't have an Aitana Bonmati, a person with those skills. We just don't.
That's true.
Right?
Yeah.
And then when I watch Champions League, I'm like, where's our Rosa Kafaji? Where's our Lily Johannes? Where's our Senior Gaupset? Where are teenagers that can perform at this level? I think we're excited about Mia Fischel. We're excited about Jaden Shaw. Obviously, Sophia Smith. You know, like those are kind of great players, but those players are almost like half a generation older than some of the young stars that we're seeing in Champions League. I guess we have Alyssa Thompson, who's, you know, obviously one of the youngest to ever be drafted, but she still kind of feels like, you know, a freshman or a sophomore, kind of like, you know, like when you watch her out there, and it's not the same level of impact on the game that you see from other young players in other countries. So I think it's also a player development issue. Now, the strategy you overlay on top of that. Yeah. Can you be smart about what you have? And I think that's when you see teams in international competitions that, you know, they don't have the most talent, but they rock. You know, Colombia in this last World Cup kind of comes to mind. Yeah, you know, some talented players, but it wasn't one of the third or fourth most talented squads, right? But they were just tough. They fucking played hard as shit, and they played really good. And that's another footballing culture / country. And where's our Linda Caicedo? 18 years old. You know, like these other countries have elite, super young talent that are getting real reps, you know, both globally and on these international competitions.
Yeah, I think you're totally right there. And you do a really good job of kind of taking that like broader picture. And so that's a very you attribute. And then my attribute as just such a dork of like, I'm on FIFA. Like, yeah, in this match, I'm playing a 3-4-2-1. Like, it was like, what? Like, I'm fucking Pep Guardiola out here or whatever. But like, I think you're totally right about the youth development. You got to get them real reps. Like we've talked about when we talked about the college draft and like, how are you going to be able to compete with like academies? How many academies are starting to bubble up? Do we want you to play in the NWSL? Like, I think for me and you who enjoy watching the NWSL, I would like that league to be great. And, you know, Esther Gonzalez for the champion Gotham FC, she seems to think NWSL is pretty goddamn good. You know, we talked about her quotes of like every week is like playing Barcelona in Liga F. You know, we kind of had our comments on that. But like, if you're going to do that, like you said, like we have to have the young stars. I think the one comment, and let me just say to Dan Johannes, our pal, forgive me, buddy. I'm not trying to put pressure on you. You mentioned you were talking about the young talent. You said, where's our Lily Johannes? Buddy, Lily Johannes is our Lily Johannes. So, Dan, forgive me, buddy. I'm not trying to put pressure on you or Lily. I'm just saying, her at number 10 for the USA, we're cooking if that's the case.
Hard cosign for me. She's a young. She's young. So I don't put too much pressure on her.
Of course.
Live your life, Lily. You do what you want to do. But would we be really happy on the Into the Channel podcast if you came over? Yes, we would.
We got your back no matter what, though.
100%. Go Ajax. Anything else you want to hit before we get out of here?
I think we nailed it. I'm just really excited, speaking of Ajax, to swinging things back to the Champions League. God damn, this is a good quarterfinal, man. This is going to be an excellent tournament, and it's just getting better.
Oh, yeah, God. When I woke up and I saw the draw, I knew this was going to happen, but I looked at all four matchups. I'm like, oh my God, that's the matchup. And like all four of them, I was just like, oh my God. Like Benfica, Lyon, I'm like, let's fucking go. It's just such an exciting. I mean, there was no combination of the four that was going to be any kind of disappointing. I think our guy Camp Hope, he hit it right on the head last week where he's like, all 8 teams, there's no gimmies in this tournament. When he was reading off all the teams that Real Madrid have beat in their history, I didn't recognize any of those teams, just full transparency.
Yep. Yeah,
but
same.
It's very clear that we're now in an era where I really do believe any runner up. I mean, even Barcelona and Brann, it's a little bit far fetched. We have a lot of fun with that, but I wouldn't be shocked if Brann pulls the upset at home in just a fucking wild match. The snow is coming down and it's cold and it just kind of gets away from Barcelona a little bit. And then they go back to Barcelona. It could happen. It wouldn't be the most surprising outcome ever, and that's probably the most lopsided of the matchups.
It would probably, I don't have the Cam Pope encyclopedic knowledge of the UEFA Women's Champions League. It would have to be pretty close to the most surprising upset ever, right? But yeah, your point is well taken though. And man, let's get a snow game, buddy. Let's go. All of the underdogs, super live. I just think this is really setting up to be an unbelievably exciting tournament in general.
Yeah, and it's just the first round, right, of a knockout stage football. We're gonna whittle these teams down until there's just the one champion. All right, man. I think we did it. It's been another episode of Into the Channel. Subscribe or follow us. YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you like to watch or listen. Comments, ratings, reviews, always appreciated. At ITC_pod on X. At Into the Channel Pod on Threads. Big thanks to you all for watching and or listening. We're thrilled to have you hanging out with us. We very much appreciate all of the comments, all of the corrections, all of the interactivity. It's been incredibly rewarding, I think, for the both of us. And big thank you to you as well, my co-host, Mr. Grant Engel, for being our number 1 draft pick here at the ITC.
I appreciate that, buddy. I will try to live up to the number 1 draft pick moniker. I appreciate you trusting me with those kind of things. And let me just second your thanks to the viewers and the listeners. We appreciate you guys. It's been very cool to find women's football pals around the world who care about this great game the way we do. So please let us know. We got a couple of weeks. March 19th is the first leg of the quarterfinals. Me and Dino, we're constantly mulling on this stuff. We know the world of football never stops. We're going to have stuff to talk about. But if there's stuff you want to hear about, if you got topics, you got ideas, toss them up there, and we'll try to get it done.
Let's go.
And in the meantime, we got Africa Cup of Nations. There's all kinds of football that we're going to be watching out here. So hit us up, and we'll be talking to you guys soon.